The wind rolled across the empty plains like a living thing, hot, dry, and restless. It carried the scent of dust, oil, and the faint echo of thunder far beyond the ranch. Jake Turner leaned on the wooden fence, his eyes fixed on the horizon where a trail of smoke cut across the golden sky. It wasn't the usual kind of smoke, too black, too sudden. Something had fallen. Something big. He spat the dried dust from his mouth and muttered, "Ain't no storm today." Then he heard it. A faint, high-pitched cry. Not human. Not machine either. Jake grabbed his old pickup keys from the hook by the barn door. The truck roared to life, coughing smoke before settling into its familiar growl. He didn't call the authorities. Out here, by the edge of the Colorado plains, the nearest help was 100 miles and half a lifetime away. You see something strange, you handle it yourself. That's how ranchers survive. The closer he got, the stronger the smell, like metal burning mixed with ozone and something sweet, something alive. Then he saw it, the crater. A ship, twisted and broken, half buried in dirt and sagebrush. It wasn't human. The edges shimmered faintly, like heat waves that refused to die. Jake stepped out of the truck slowly, boots crunching gravel. "Hello," he called. No answer. Then a sound, weak, trembling, came from behind the wreck. He circled the edge, his hand resting on the old shotgun slung across his back. 3 small figures huddled near the shadow of the ship. Their skin faintly blue, eyes too large, breath shallow. And behind them, a woman. Tall, graceful even in ruin, her once silver cloak now covered in ash and blood. Her eyes, soft but fierce, locked on him the moment he stepped forward. "Stay back," she hissed in a language that wasn't English but carried weight. Her arm lifted slightly, trembling. A shard of metal floated beside her. She was trying to defend them, even in pain. Jake froze. His instinct told him to run. His heart told him otherwise. "You're hurt," he said slowly, lifting both hands. "You got kids. I ain't here to harm you." The woman blinked, confused, maybe recognizing tone if not words. One of the small ones coughed. A sharp, wet sound that made Jake's gut twist. He'd seen calves dying like that after a storm. Too much dust. No air. He made his choice. Humans always make choices, and sometimes they don't think twice about it. He walked closer, knee-deep in smoke and silence. "If you can understand me," he said firmly, "you need to move. This ship's leaking fuel. You'll all burn." Her gaze flicked toward the glowing wreck. The children whimpered. The metal shard dropped from her hand, clattering in the dirt. She was out of strength. Jake moved fast then, grabbing the smallest first, wrapping them in his jacket. The woman stumbled as he guided her to the truck. "Come on, get in. You'll die here," he said, opening the door. She didn't argue. Maybe instinct, maybe desperation. She gathered her children and climbed in, her silver eyes never leaving his face. The engine growled again as Jake hit the gas. Behind them, the alien ship erupted, a wave of fire and dust lighting up the darkening sky. The blast hit the truck's back window like a hammer, but Jake kept driving. Miles later, as the smoke faded behind them, the woman whispered something, a word he couldn't understand. It sounded like thanks. Jake didn't answer. He just looked ahead, the road stretching into the fading light. Somewhere deep down, he knew nothing about his life was ever going to be normal again. By the time Jake's old pickup rattled into the ranch yard, night had swallowed the plains. The stars were bright, sharp, and countless, like shattered glass scattered across a black ocean. The aliens in the truck were silent, the woman clutching her children close as if afraid the very wind might steal them away. Jake parked beside the barn. The truck's engine coughed, sputtered, and died. The sudden quiet felt heavier than the firestorm they'd just escaped. He stepped out, walked around, and opened the door. "You're safe here," he said quietly. "For now." The woman stared at him, unsure if she should trust him or not. Her eyes darted to the barn, to the horizon, then back to him. One of the children whimpered. Jake crouched down and offered a canteen. "Water. It's clean." The smallest child reached for it. Tiny fingers, blue skin, eyes glowing faintly like moonlight on glass. The child took a sip, flinched, then smiled. The first sound of life Jake had heard from them. It made something in him loosen. The woman watched him, still cautious. She touched the side of her neck where a faint shimmer pulsed under the skin, maybe a wound, maybe something else. Jake didn't ask. He didn't need to. He just pointed toward the old farmhouse. You all can stay inside. Got spare rooms. Not fancy, but warm. Inside, the house smelled of wood, dust, and old coffee. The fire crackled in the stone hearth. The children huddled near it, whispering in soft, musical tones. The woman sat quietly, her silver cloak folded around her. Jake handed her a blanket. You from up there? He asked, nodding toward the sky. She hesitated, then nodded once. We fled war, she said slowly, the words rough, broken, but English. He blinked. She was learning fast. My name is Sarah. Sarah, Jake repeated. I'm Jake. Her eyes softened, but only for a moment. Thank you, Jake, she said carefully. You saved my children. He shrugged, uneasy under her gaze. Anyone would have done the same. She tilted her head slightly. No, she said simply. Not anyone. The firelight flickered across her face, and for the first time, Jake noticed the exhaustion, the way her hands trembled, the faint lines of ash burned into her skin. She wasn't some untouchable alien goddess. She was a mother running for her life. Later that night, when the house had gone quiet, Jake stood by the window, looking out at the endless plains. His old radio crackled softly beside him. A voice from a nearby base cut through the static. Unidentified atmospheric event detected west of County Line Road. All civilians are advised to report sightings immediately. Jake turned off the radio. He looked out again. He could still see the faint glow of the crash far away. He knew what that announcement meant. The government, or someone worse, would come looking. Behind him, a soft sound made him turn. Sarah stood in the doorway, her eyes reflecting the firelight. They will come, she said quietly, as if she could read his thoughts. They will not stop until we are found. Jake sighed, rubbing his neck. Yeah, he muttered. That's what I figured. Why help us? She asked suddenly. Why risk yourself? He looked at her, really looked at her. Because, he said, I've seen families torn apart before. War, hunger, greed, doesn't matter who starts it. Folks always forget the ones just trying to survive. Sarah didn't answer. She just looked down, the faint shimmer under her skin pulsing faster. Fear, maybe. Jake walked past her, grabbing his old rifle from the wall. You and your kids stay inside, he said. If anyone comes asking, I'll handle it. Handle? She asked. He smiled faintly. Means they won't get past me. Outside, the wind howled again, sweeping across the dry fields. Jake stood on the porch, his hat low, his eyes scanning the road. Somewhere out there, engines were already humming. Whoever had seen that explosion was on their way. And Jake Turner, simple rancher, quiet man, was about to find out just how far humanity could go when someone they cared about was in danger. The war that had burned across the stars was coming to his doorstep. And this time, the rancher wasn't backing down. The first knock came before sunrise. Hard. Heavy. The kind of knock that didn't ask permission, it demanded answers. Jake was already awake. He'd been up since 3, sitting in the kitchen with his coffee gone cold, watching headlights flicker far off the ridge. He'd known they were coming. You didn't hide a falling star in your backyard without someone noticing. He stood slowly, the wooden floor creaking under his boots. Outside, the dogs were growling, low, uncertain. He reached for the shotgun, resting by the door. The old weapon wasn't much compared to the tech these men probably carried, but it was something. The knock came again. Louder this time. Mr. Turner, a voice barked. Federal search and recovery. We need to speak with you about last night's incident. Jake opened the door halfway. A tall man stood on the porch wearing a gray uniform, his badge shining dull in the dawn light. 2 others stood behind him, armed, scanning the fields with small handheld sensors. A black vehicle hummed quietly near the gate. No markings. No plates. What kind of incident? Jake asked, his voice even. The agent smiled thinly. You live alone, Mr. Turner? Most days. There was a meteor strike a few miles west. We're checking properties nearby for debris. His eyes flicked past Jake into the shadows of the house. May we come in? Jake leaned his shoulder against the frame. You got a warrant? The man hesitated, then smiled again, colder this time. This isn't a legal matter, sir. It's a safety concern. Some materials may be radioactive. Dangerous to civilians. Jake let out a slow breath. Ain't seen any meteors. Just another quiet night. The agent's eyes narrowed. Mind if we look around anyway? I do mind, Jake said simply. For a long second, Neither moved. Then the agent gave a small nod. Understood. But we'll be back. And next time, we won't ask. They turned, boots crunching on gravel. Jake watched them leave until the vehicle disappeared down the dusty road. He closed the door quietly, locking it. Behind him, Sarah stood at the end of the hallway, holding one of her children close. Her face was pale, or whatever passed for pale in her kind. They came, she whispered. They'll come again, Jake said. And next time, they won't knock first. Her voice trembled. You should send us away. They will kill you if they find us. Jake set the shotgun down. Lady, I ain't in the habit of throwing scared kids into the dirt just to save my own hide. Her eyes filled with tears, shimmering like liquid silver. You do not understand what follows us. They are not human. The war that found us will not stop at your world. He met her gaze evenly. Then I guess it's about time humanity learned to fight back. Outside, the morning sun crept across the fields. Jake walked to the barn, checking the generator and securing the doors. He moved like a man who'd been through too much and wasn't afraid of more. The old radio crackled again, this time with static and strange interference, a soft hum that wasn't coming from Earth. He turned it off. By noon, the black vehicles were back. 3 of them this time. Soldiers, or something close, spilled out, wearing armor that didn't belong to any government Jake recognized. No flags, no insignia, just matte gray plating and rifles that glowed faintly at the barrel. Jake stood on the porch again, hands steady. You boys lost. The lead soldier didn't answer. He lifted a small scanner, and the screen flashed red. Life signatures detected, he said to the one beside him. Non-human. Jake stepped forward. Ain't nothing non-human here except the coyotes. The soldier raised his weapon. Step aside, civilian. Jake's voice dropped low, rough as gravel. You'll have to go through me. For a heartbeat, the world went still. Then the soldier's gun fired. A beam of blue light that missed Jake's shoulder by inches and tore a hole clean through the porch railing. Jake didn't wait for a second shot. The shotgun roared, and the sound ripped across the plains. One soldier fell, armor sparking. Another shouted. Chaos erupted. Inside, Sarah screamed for her children to stay low. The house shook as bullets, or whatever they fired, slammed into the walls. Jake ducked behind the tractor, reloading, his pulse pounding. He wasn't trained for this. He wasn't a soldier. But this was his land, his home, and no one, human or alien, was taking it from him. When the smoke cleared, 2 of the attackers were down. The rest retreated, dragging their wounded toward the vehicles. One turned back, glaring at Jake through a cracked visor. You have no idea what you're protecting, he spat. Jake chambered another shell. Maybe not. But I know what I stand for. The engines roared. The vehicles sped off in a cloud of dust. Jake lowered the gun, breathing hard. His shoulder bled from a burn, but he didn't care. Behind him, Sarah stood in the doorway. Her eyes wide. You fought for us, she whispered. Jake looked back at her, his voice quiet but firm. No, ma'am. I fought for what's right. That night, the ranch felt different. Too quiet. Too still. The stars above the plains burned sharp and cold, but Jake couldn't find comfort in them anymore. He sat on the porch steps, shirt torn, shoulder wrapped in an old towel soaked with antiseptic. Every movement hurt, but he wasn't about to stop now. Inside, Sarah tended to her children. Their soft voices murmured in their alien tongue, afraid, but safe for now. The youngest one had drawn on Jake's old notepad, clumsy sketches of stars, ships, and what looked like a tall man with a hat. Jake smiled faintly when he saw it, even though his ribs still ached. When Sarah stepped outside, the night air shimmered faintly around her. Her kind seemed to carry light wherever they went, faint silver trails like fireflies that faded quickly. She looked at him for a long moment. You are injured. Been worse, Jake muttered. You killed 2 of them, she said softly, almost in disbelief. No one has ever fought them and lived. Jake shrugged. Guess no one tried hard enough. Sarah sat beside him, her eyes fixed on the dark horizon. They will return, she whispered. And not just soldiers this time. Hunters. They follow signals of life energy. They can sense my kind, even across light years. Jake sighed, rubbing his jaw. So we cut the signal. Her gaze shifted toward him, curious. Cut. You said they track energy. That means it's something physical, something sending it. Maybe the wreckage. Sarah thought for a moment, then nodded. Yes. The core still pulses beneath the crater. They will follow it. Jake stood up, his boots grinding against the porch. Then we'll take care of it before they do. You cannot go alone, she said quickly, standing. The air near the crash site burns with radiation. He grinned slightly. Then it's a good thing I've got an old tractor and a lot of stubbornness. Sarah frowned. You joke when death waits in the dark. Ma'am, he said, adjusting his hat. I've seen death up close plenty of times. He and I just don't get along. She almost smiled. Almost. By dawn, Jake had gathered his tools, a gas mask, lead blankets, and an ancient Geiger counter that rattled with every shake of his hand. Sarah insisted on coming, despite his protests. If the core must be destroyed, she said, it needs me. It was built by my people. So they went together. The truck bounced across the empty land, toward the blackened crater. Smoke still rose from the wreckage, curling into the morning light. Jake climbed out first, scanning the area. No movement, he said. Sarah stepped forward, her hands glowing faintly as she approached the heart of the crash. The ship's metal pulsed with faint blue veins, alive in a way that made Jake's skin crawl. She reached toward the central column, whispering words in her language. The glow grew brighter, then flickered. The core is unstable, she said. If they reach it first, they will use it to locate every survivor of my race. Across the stars, Jake glanced at the horizon. Then we better make sure that doesn't happen. He tossed her a crowbar. You do the fancy work. I'll do the breaking. She blinked at the tool, uncertain, then gave a faint smile. Humans and their tools. Together, they worked, she channeling energy, him forcing open the panels. Sparks danced in the air, the hum rising to a near scream. Jake felt heat radiating through his gloves. Now what? He yelled. Now, Sarah said, voice shaking. You run. She pressed her hands to the core. Light exploded outward, blinding white. Jake grabbed her arm and pulled her back, both of them thrown to the ground as the wreck erupted in a plume of fire and dust. The shockwave rolled across the plains, knocking the breath from his lungs. When the noise faded, only silence remained. The ship was gone, melted into the earth. Jake coughed, sitting up. That thing's still tracking us. Sarah shook her head, tears streaming down her face. No, it's gone. But they will know the signal vanished. They will come to find why. He looked out over the horizon, the sunrise painting the sky blood orange. Then we'll be ready. Sarah turned to him. You would fight for a world that is not yours. Jake's eyes hardened. Lady, it became my world the moment you and your kids stepped into my truck. She stared at him, really stared, and for the first time, she saw it. That strange, fierce fire that burned in humans. The kind that refused to yield, even when the universe told them they should. As the wind carried the scent of smoke across the plains, Sarah whispered something in her own tongue. An oath, a prayer, or maybe a promise. Jake didn't understand the words, but he understood the feeling. Something had changed that morning, and from that moment on, it wasn't just about hiding anymore. It was about standing their ground. By nightfall, the sky above Iron Creek was bruised purple, heavy with thunderclouds that glowed faintly with lightning. The land smelled like rain and ozone, and Jake could feel it in his bones. The storm wasn't just in the sky. It was coming for them. The kids were asleep in the cellar, wrapped in blankets, safe for now. Sarah stood by the window, her silver eyes watching the horizon where strange lights flickered low in the clouds. Not lightning, not natural. They're coming, she whispered. Jake checked his rifle, sliding in the last cartridge. Let them come. She turned toward him, voice trembling. You cannot fight them all. Lady, he said, setting the gun on the table. I ain't planning to win a war. I'm just planning to make em regret starting one on my land. Sarah watched him quietly. There was something ancient in her gaze, sorrow mixed with wonder. You're kind, she said softly. You fight without hope, yet you never stop. Jake gave a half smile. We don't fight 'cause we hope. We fight 'cause someone's gotta. Outside, the wind screamed through the fields, bending the dry grass low. In the distance, faint engines rumbled, not trucks this time. Something else. Something heavier. Jake moved to the barn, his boots splashing in the mud. Inside, lantern light glowed over old tools, wires, and machines scavenged over the years. He'd been working since dawn, turning scraps into weapons. A generator rigged to car batteries. Nails packed into glass bottles. a handful of surprises waiting to greet their uninvited guests. Sarah entered quietly. You prepare as if you have fought wars before. Jake didn't look up. Not this kind. But folks here, we've fought droughts, fires, and bankers. All kinds of enemies that don't bleed but still take everything you've got. So yeah, I guess we learned to push back. She placed her hand on one of the old radios. It flickered with light, her energy flowing through the circuits. I can make your signal stronger. Use their own frequency to confuse them. Jake whistled softly. Now that's teamwork. They worked side by side, human and alien, machine and power. Sparks filled the air. Rain began to fall outside, steady and cold. Then, in the distance, headlights. Not one, not two, but dozens, cutting through the night. Jake grabbed the rifle. They found us. Sarah nodded, her hands glowing brighter. I will try to shield the house. It will not hold long. Just long enough, Jake said. The first vehicle crested the ridge, black and silent except for the hum of engines that didn't belong to this world. Soldiers in gray armor fanned out, weapons raised. One of them shouted, "By order of the Union of Stellar Authority, surrender the fugitives." Jake stepped into the open rain, hat low, shotgun resting in his hands. "Ain't got no fugitives here," he called. "Only guests." "Step aside," the leader barked. Jake spat into the mud. "Can't do that." The soldier's visor gleamed. "You are protecting enemies of the state." Jake smirked. "Funny. That's what they used to say about us back in '79 when we refused to sell our water rights. Guess some things never change." The man raised his weapon, and the storm answered. Thunder exploded across the plains as the first shot rang out. Jake dove behind the old tractor as plasma bolts sliced through the rain. The traps he'd built lit up, electric arcs dancing across the field, shorting out scanners and frying armor. Sarah stood near the porch, both hands raised, her power forming a shimmering dome around the house. Energy hit it like rain on glass, each impact echoing like a drumbeat. Her eyes glowed fierce silver, veins of light crawling up her arms. Jake fired again. One soldier fell. Another stumbled as the ground beneath him erupted from the buried propane tank Jake had wired earlier. The explosion threw mud and metal high into the air. But there were too many. One by one, the shield flickered. Sarah cried out, her strength faltering. Jake ran to her, pulling her behind the old truck as more blasts tore into the barn. "Can't hold much longer," she gasped. Jake looked at her, bleeding, shaking, but alive. "Then we go down fighting." She met his gaze. "You humans, your madness wrapped in courage." He chuckled weakly. "Best kind of madness there is." Lightning split the sky. For one instant, the whole battlefield lit up, human and alien, fire and rain. And in that instant, the universe saw something it had long forgotten. A single human standing his ground not for glory, not for survival, but because someone needed protecting. The hunters had come to take everything. But they'd made one mistake. They picked a fight with a rancher who didn't know how to quit. Rain hammered down like bullets, turning the fields to rivers of mud. The storm howled across the plains, swallowing every sound except the roar of engines and the hiss of plasma fire. Jake's world had become lightning, smoke, and thunder. He crouched behind the overturned truck, his rifle slick with rain, his hands trembling from exhaustion. The smell of burning metal filled the air. Sarah was beside him, her glow dimmer now, flickering like a dying candle. "They are surrounding us," she said weakly. "I can see that," Jake muttered, chambering his last few shells. He leaned out, fired twice, dropped another soldier. "How many more?" Sarah closed her eyes briefly. 23. No more. They keep coming. Jake looked up at the dark clouds. Figures. A burst of plasma struck the hood, sending molten shards flying. Jake pulled Sarah closer, shielding her with his body. "Stay down." "I can't," she whispered. "The shield is gone. I have nothing left." Jake looked into her eyes, tired, scared, and yet still burning with that same fierce will. "You've done enough. You brought them this far. Let me do the rest." He rose to his feet. The rain poured harder, thunder rumbling like a god's warning. He walked into the open field, shotgun in one hand, his other bleeding from a fresh burn. The soldiers saw him. Their visors glowed red. One shouted, "Surrender, human. This is not your fight." Jake stopped, rain running down his face. "You're wrong," he said quietly. "It's exactly my fight." He fired. The first shot tore through the front line. The second hit a generator pack, erupting in blue fire. The field exploded in chaos. Soldiers screamed, scrambling for cover as the rancher advanced through fire and rain like a ghost out of legend. Inside the house, Sarah's children huddled together, their small hands glowing faintly. They felt their mother's pain, the fear outside, and something else. Something awakening. Sarah staggered toward the door. "Jake," she shouted. Her voice cracked like lightning. He turned just in time to see one of the hunters take aim at her. Without thinking, he dove. The shot tore across his back, searing through cloth and flesh. He fell hard into the mud, breath knocked out. Sarah screamed, a sound that wasn't human. It shook the air, rippled through the storm. The raindrops froze mid-fall for a fraction of a second. Then the world changed. A surge of silver light erupted from her, expanding like a wave. The soldiers froze, weapons raised, caught in its glow. Their armor sparked violently as their systems overloaded. One by one, they collapsed, their helmets cracking, visors shattering. The rain hissed against the glowing field, steam rising everywhere. Jake blinked through the brightness, barely conscious. What did you do?" he gasped. Sarah knelt beside him, tears mixing with rain. "I broke the bond," she said softly. "The one they used to track us. I burned my life to end it." He tried to sit up, but his strength failed. You can't do that. I already have." She smiled faintly, touching his cheek with trembling fingers. "You showed me what it means to fight for something greater than survival. Humans, your kind burns so bright, even when the universe goes dark." Jake coughed, blood mixing with rain. "You're one of us now, Sarah." Her eyes shimmered. "No, you're one of us." The light dimmed slowly, the field fading until only the soft glow of the storm remained. The soldiers were gone, scattered or dead. The sound of thunder was replaced by silence, thick and heavy. Jake lay still for a long moment, staring up at the clouds. His breath came shallow. Sarah pressed her hands against his wound, whispering words that glowed faintly on her lips. Energy flowed through him, warm, painful, alive. He gasped, grabbing her wrist. "What are you doing?" "Giving back what I borrowed," she said, her voice fading. "My strength. My life. Yours now." "Don't," he started, but her eyes were already closing. The glow around her pulsed once, twice, then faded into nothing. The rain softened. The sky cleared. And Jake Turner, battered, bleeding, human, sat in the mud surrounded by the wreckage of two worlds. He looked down at her still body, her silver eyes now dull and peaceful. Around him, her children emerged from the cellar, crying softly. Jake reached out, resting a hand on Sarah's shoulder. "You did it," he whispered. "They'll never find you again." He stood slowly, the storm's last rumble echoing over the plains. The ranch was half destroyed, the barn gone, but he was still standing. Humanity was still standing. And the stars, the same ones that had watched civilizations rise and fall, now watched a single man in the mud, defying the universe itself. Morning came slowly, dragging sunlight across the wrecked plains like a tired promise. The storm had passed, leaving silence, that strange, heavy silence after chaos, when even the earth seems to breathe again. Smoke rose from what was once Jake Turner's barn. The fields were scorched, the fences twisted, the old tractor burned to black metal. And in the center of it all stood Jake, hat in one hand, rifle in the other, eyes fixed on the horizon. Behind him, the farmhouse door creaked open. Sarah's children stepped out, blinking at the light. Their small faces still streaked with tears, their silver eyes reflecting the morning. Jake turned, his heart breaking a little at the sight. "Hey," he said softly, voice rough. "You kids hungry?" They didn't understand the words, but they understood the tone. One of them nodded. Another reached for his hand. Jake knelt, wrapping his rough, calloused fingers around theirs. "Your mom, she saved us. All of us. We ain't gonna waste what she gave." He stood slowly, looking toward the east, where the first faint smoke trails of distant ships still lingered in the sky. Whoever sent those soldiers would notice soon that they'd gone dark. Someone would come asking questions. But not today. Today, humanity had earned its silence. Inside the ruined barn, Jake worked for hours, piecing together what was left of Sarah's ship. The power core was gone, burned out completely, but the comm arrays still held faint life. She'd given her strength to him, and something else. Her knowledge. When he touched the cracked panel, words flickered across his mind. Not English, but somehow he understood. Beacon. Message. Home. He smiled faintly. Yeah, he muttered. Let's send him a message. He scavenged what he could: copper wire, old solar batteries, the wreck's fractured antenna. The work was hard, bloody, and lonely, but he didn't stop. By sunset, a soft hum filled the air, and the makeshift transmitter glowed faint blue. Jake adjusted the dials, staring at the open mic. His voice, when it came, was low, steady, and carried the weight of every stubborn human who'd ever stood their ground. To whoever's listening out there, this is Earth. You sent killers to my doorstep. You burned my land, hurt good people, and thought no one would stand in your way. You were wrong. We may be farmers, mechanics, miners, or teachers, but when you come for us, you'd better come ready. Because we fight for each other. And we don't stop. He paused, letting the silence fill the channel. Then, quieter. And if Sarah's people are out there, she made it count. She made us count. You're not alone anymore. He flipped the switch. The beacon pulsed once, then shot its signal into the stars. A faint blue light climbing through the sky like a promise no storm could drown. That night, the children sat by the fire. Jake cooked what was left of the canned beans, the old radio humming softly in the corner. The youngest pointed to the stars, whispering words in their mother's language. Jake followed their gaze. Somewhere out there, across the endless dark, other worlds were listening. Maybe even the ones that sent those soldiers. He leaned back in his chair, the old floor creaking beneath his boots. If they come again, he said quietly, they'll find Earth ready this time. He looked at the children, small, fragile, glowing faintly in the firelight, and something in his chest eased for the first time since the crash. They weren't just her children anymore. They were his responsibility now. His family. He reached for his hat, setting it on the youngest's head. Reckon we'll teach you how to ride a horse tomorrow, he said. Can't grow up human without learning that. The kid smiled, a real smile this time, and the sound of laughter, light and strange and alien, filled the house. Outside, the beacon continued to pulse in the distance, steady, defiant, alive. And somewhere beyond the stars, far from Earth, 1,000 hidden colonies received the signal. They heard the voice of a human rancher from a small blue world, a man who had stood alone against the storm and won. And in that moment, the universe learned something new. Humanity had entered the map, and they were not the prey anymore. They were the warning.